Don King has admitted to constantly robbing boxers, yet he still has clients to this day at 91 years of age. But there are two boxers that all of us know that have gone the short end of the stick: Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson. And here's how it all happened. It starts in the Cleveland ghettos. Donald King was born on August 20th, 1931. Losing his father at the age of 10, he had to start hustling at a very young age, selling bags of peanuts to get by. As a sale gimmick, he would add lucky numbers onto the bag of peanuts, saying that the numbers in the bag were more likely to come out in the next day's lottery, a lottery that was chosen at random. But in high school, he would dip his feet into boxing as a fighter. But after getting hit in the face and getting knocked down a couple times, he decided that sport wasn't for him, not in the ring at least. However, he became a successful numbers runner, a math whiz, if you will. He was nicknamed Cadillac Slim in the streets of Cleveland. He reinvested the profits of what he earned into a club, which if you watch my videos, you know investing into a business is one of the best moves you can make out there. In fact, you could even say that Don King was making a killing, both figuratively and literally, because he ended 2 lives at his club. The first one took place when somebody broke into King's property and he had to shoot the intruder down in the back. After a long trial, Don would beat the charges for this one. However, the second one, he would not be so lucky. In 1967, he got into a scuffle with one of his employees. When the police arrived, he was stomping on his employee on the sidewalk, and his employee ended up being in a coma and went on to pass a few days later. Don was facing life behind bars. However, allegedly, after some tampering with the jury, his charges would be decreased to 10 years in prison. Here, Don would do most of his self-education and turn into a person that could quote Shakespeare at will, a skill that would become extremely important for him during his career. He would finally come out of jail and decide to stay on the legal path. He considered music, he considered film, but he settled on boxing, not as a fighter, but as a promoter. He managed to book in his first event the best fighter of all time, something that is impossible for many promoters, yet Don did it on his first one. Here's how he pulled it off. After coming out of prison, he would talk to his close friend, singer Lloyd Price, who happened to know Muhammad Ali. They would brainstorm a plan for King to get started in the boxing business. The scheme that Don King came up with was to convince Muhammad Ali to box for him with an exhibition fight to raise funds for a hospital in Forest City. The process was extremely hard for King to get it done, but he finessed his way into getting the top star in boxing. But many people have reservations on renting an arena to a convicted killer. However, Don King is the master of making outlandish offers and even better at delivering outlandish promises. He would be able to secure the Cleveland arena and 8,500 people would show up. Don King made sure to stand out as a promoter himself, adopting quite a look with his wacky haircut. After all expenses were paid in the show, the hospital only got $1,500. Don King would keep the rest. This would become a pattern with Don King and a first glimpse at the con man he would become in the future. Don's popularity went through the roof, and he started getting especially good at promoting heavyweights. He would constantly leave fighters if they lost and go with the winner of the fight. He would famously go into the arena with Joe Frazier on his match against George Foreman. After Foreman badly beat Frazier, Don would leave the arena with now the new champ, George Foreman.
So by the second round, when he done bounced him up and down like a basketball, I was over there in George's corner. So I went into the ring, and so George said, "Man, you said I would do it." I said, "I sure did, George. I knew you were gonna do it. You're the champ. You know, it's the new champ of the world." So George said, "Come on, you gotta stay with me." And we go out the entourage. I came with the champ, and now I'm going back home with George Foreman in the motorcade.
If Joe had knocked George to one knee, up and down like a basketball, we'd have gone home with Joe.
More likely I would have went home with Joe because to the victor goes the spoils.
Don King's biggest sales pitch was something that he had with him at all times, his race. At the time, all of Ali's promoters had been white, and to be honest, most of the boxing promoters in the game were as well. The civil rights movement was big at the time, and something that Ali himself was very passionate about. So Don would start playing the black card, and on top of that, he just had the energy of an uncle you had known your entire life, and was trying to protect you from all those scummy white promoters that were trying to scam you. And his most important buyer at this moment, a person that was a civil rights activist himself, Muhammad Ali. Don King promised Muhammad Ali and George Foreman $5 million each. Huge guarantees at the time that were unheard of. And this guarantee scared away all other promoters. And the fighters would just get lured in by the huge amount of money. Now Don King only needed $10 million and a venue to put the fight at. No small task. And the worst part is, he had neither. He would get in touch with Mobutu Sese Seko, the president of the Republic of the Congo, a president who executed his predecessor, and he would delete anyone who dared to disobey him. And in this move, he would kill two birds with one stone, because he would get both the $10 million and the venue. An event that would be promoted as Rumble in the Jungle. And 60,000 people would show up along with media from all over the world. This fight made $100 million in pay-per-view. Adjusted for inflation, that would be around $550 million nowadays. And it was watched by about 1 billion people. This would solidify Don King as the best in the business. And fighters were just lining up to sign with Don King. He would move on from Foreman onto Muhammad Ali, and he would repeat the same strategy with the Thrilla in Manila, an event that he would put on with the president of the Philippines. This would complete the trilogy between Ali and Frazier, with $4.5 million for Ali, who would win in front of a sold-out crowd. Crazy enough, these two events would be Don King's first 2 professional events that he would ever promote. However, Don King only really cared about himself, because when Ali lost to Larry Holmes in 1980, Don paid him $6.8 million with a guarantee of an $8 million purse. He persuaded one of Ali's trusted advisors to take a suitcase to the now ex-champ Ali, who was still badly concussed after the fight. The suitcase had $50,000 and a contract that said that this would be the remaining prize money that Ali would receive for the fight. And another contract giving King the rights to all the next fights that Ali would have next. And you guessed it, Don King left the arena with the now new champ, Larry Holmes, someone who would sue him and get $100,000 of a $300,000 lawsuit. It's important to mention that Don King was an extremely powerful man because he had the WBC on his pocket, meaning that he could ruin careers in a heartbeat by denying title shots to boxers that did not sign with him. And this would become extremely handy when Muhammad Ali would retire and the scams just kept getting bigger and bigger. And this scheme would become extremely clutch with his next victim, Tim Witherspoon. Because Tim and Don would argue over an ear infection, and Don King was forcing Tim to fight through the ear infection. Tim would refuse, and this would result in Don King suspending his license. The only way for him to get his license back would be to sign a contract with Don King. The catch was, it was a blank contract, one of King's trademarks. He would also have to use King's doctors to get cleared for the fights. So Tim Witherspoon had 2 options. You either starve or sign the contract. And when his money started running low, he was forced to sign the contract. Tim would go on to have his first title fight, and he would only make $50,000 from it. Don King would keep the rest. Tim was being forced to fight, and his cut kept getting lower, even though his matches just kept getting bigger and bigger. Tim would eventually win the World Heavyweight Championship 3 years later, but he only got $10,000 for this fight. His next fight took place in Wembley Stadium in front of 40,000 people, the biggest attendance since Muhammad Ali fought there. Tim Witherspoon would win his fight, yet he would only make $90,000. The loser of the match took $900,000. Tim was frustrated, bitter, and angry, and he made it clear that he wouldn't re-sign with Don King with just one more fight on his contract. Don King rigged the fight so that Tim would lose in the first round, and that is exactly what happened. Now, if he had won, he would have faced Don King's next top prospect, Mike Tyson. Mike would have 2 tragic passings in his boxing trainer, Cos D'Amato, and his promoter, Jim Jacobs. These 2 would be 2 of the only people that cared for Mike Tyson. And Don King made sure to be at Jim Jacobs' funeral. He would try to manipulate Mike Tyson to replace Jim Jacobs in Mike's life. Mike Tyson said that he would never sign with Don King because Don already had a reputation at this point after all. But Don just had a way to talk to young African American talent that came from poverty. And he would just spend time with Mike Tyson, whether it was going to clubs, concerts, connecting with celebrities. He would just spend time with Tyson. So much so that he was also at Mike's weddings a few months later, and when his marriage turned sour, Don took Mike Tyson's wife out of all bank accounts and he took control of those himself. And after the divorce, Don was essentially controlling Mike Tyson, the step he always wanted to take. Next step was just classical Don King manipulation. He fired the rest of Mike Tyson's team and instilled in Mike Tyson that it was Don and Mike against the world. Mike was set to fight Jane Buster Douglas in Tokyo, Japan. That night, Don King, Mike Tyson, and other rappers would have a fueled with Japanese and many argue that this costed Mike Tyson the fight because Mike Tyson would get knocked out for the first time. Don King's influence had ruined Mike Tyson not only financially, but also his character. Tyson was this shy kid, and now shortly after, he would get imprisoned. Don distanced himself from Mike Tyson when Tyson was in jail. 3 years later, Mike Tyson would go out, and the first person he would see when he got out would be Don King. Despite King being extremely nice to Tyson and driving him home, Tyson would still fire King the very next day. However, this wouldn't last long because he would rehire him 5 days later. That's just how good Don King was at talking to people. Mike and Don would go on to make millions once again, and Mike Tyson would increase his lifestyle and keep needing more and more and more money. In 1997, Mike Tyson lost a match via disqualification due to biting Evander Holyfield's ear off. This would cause him to lose his license and fine him for $3 million. To make up for his lost income, Mike Tyson would sign with WWF, a $3.5 million deal. Shockingly, the WWF also had to pay Don King $300,000 for something that he had nothing to do with. Because whether Mike Tyson knew it or not, he had signed his likeness rights away to Don King years ago. 30% of his purchases and contracts would go to Don King's pockets. When Mike would find out, he would hire lawyers and accountants and sue Don King. But Mike was in a very similar situation to Tim Witherspoon, and Don King offered to settle the lawsuit at $20 million in a trip to Miami. But Mike Tyson would refuse.
Don King calls me up and he's tells me, hey, let's just do this over. I'm gonna give you this 50 million, 25 million, whatever it was. We're gonna squash the lawsuit and everything. And I'm so happy. And then he sends his plane to pick me up. I'm so happy. And I'm so, I got money. I've been broke for so many years. I'm like, oh, I got fucking 50 million. I had, you know what? Like he's doing me a fucking favor. This is my fucking plane. At first I felt like, oh, I'm gonna be balling. I'm in the jet. He stole my money, but he's playing me. He playing me like a bitch. He's sending my plane to pick me up, and then my mind started going. And so Don picked me up, right? And he's like, hey, brother, man, I love you, man. We gonna be rich. Fuck the white people, nigga, and me and you black people together. We got bills. We gonna make millions. And he's driving. I'm in the back seat, right? And Jackie's in the front seat with him, right? And I was thinking about it, and I is in the back seat of the Rolls Royce. And I know I go like this. I'm in the back seat, and I just go, boom, and I kicked on, and boom, and the car stopped. I'm beating it. I think, Jackie, hold that nigga. I want to get in the front seat. So I said, Jackie, hold this motherfucker, Jackie. I said, no, Mike, because Jackie's thinking about the money too, but I lost it. And Jackie doesn't want to hold it because Jackie wants the money. I ain't gonna hold you and let you kill it, nigga. We gonna get the money. The cop come and picks us up and drive me to my hotel and say, you okay, champ, thanks. And that was it.
Mike Tyson filed for bankruptcy shortly after the Miami trip. In the end, Don King convinced Mike to settle the lawsuit for $14 million. Not only lower than the first offer, but also barely to pay his legal fees. But shortly after, Don King's fighters would start leaving him due to his reputation, and Don King grew increasingly desperate. He would sign Evander Holyfield, and even though if Holyfield would lose fights clearly, he would still get the win by the judges because Don King was rigging the fights. Same with Roy Jones Jr. But at the end of the day, all of them bought their way out of their contract. And the Muhammad Ali Boxing Reform Act would pass, essentially protecting fighters from all of Don King's tactics. But if you thought that this would spell the end for Don King, you would be wrong, because he still manages great boxers like Adrian Broner at 91 years old. Whether Broner is being scammed currently or not is unknown. But if he is, he will end up like Mike Tyson. So go ahead and watch this video to see the consequences of Don King's work and how Mike Tyson went from $300 million and ended up absolutely screwed. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please subscribe and hit the like button, and I'll see you in the next video. See ya!
Hey Don, why'd you rob Mike Tyson and Muhammad Ali like Barack Obama robbed us?
Because I loved them. I loved them, and I thought it was just so nice that they would give me an opportunity for me to make them rich so that I could rob them, because they were poor when they came to me and there was nothing to rob.